Kingdom Analytics, our goal is to give you all the information you need to make the best decisions in your church. With access to thousands of data points on nearly every household in America, we're able to give you a picture of who exactly is in your church and how to reach more of your community. The data we provide will help you make decisions on everything from where to put a new multi-site campus, all the way down to what flavor of coffee you should buy. So come talk to us today about scheduling a free consultation for your church.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Esparza. I'm the founder of Kingdom Analytics. Over the last 3 years, we've been blessed to serve over 200 churches all across the country. And we do this by giving them access to thousands of data points on both their community and their congregation. We're able to look at things like what are the ministry needs in our community, how is our congregation equipped to fit those needs, who are we reaching, who are we not reaching, and maybe how do we reach those people in our communities. If you'd like to learn a little more, we're kind of doing a little special thing here where you're able to sign up for a free consultation. You can email myself directly, Andrew at kingdomanalytics.com, and we'll talk about some of the potential opportunities within your church and your community as it relates to data and some of the services we may be able to provide to help you grow and reach more of your community. So we're really excited for that. And another great thing is through our partnership with Transformation Ministries as Transformation Ministry member churches, you also receive a really great discount on any of those services, better than anyone else will get anywhere in the country. So we're looking forward to that. And again, if you'd like to learn more, feel free to set up a free consultation with us. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.
Welcome to the TM webinar. We've got some great stuff in store for you heading into our TMC conference October 15th. That's a Thursday. We've been doing webinars every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We took August off, and now in September we're doing a little bit different. We're having webinars that would mainly be the workshops for the conference, since the conference will be virtual. And today we've got just a great guests, two people, Tricia and Justin Davis. I'll be introducing them in a moment. We are so glad you're here. The conference is coming up, like I said, Thursday, October 15th, and we have some sponsors who are helping us put on the conference and also helping us put on these webinars. And our first sponsor that we're highlighting today is a group called Kingdom Analytics that does demographics and all sorts of background stuff that you might be very interested in your ministry there. So let's go ahead and show that video. It's about a 2-minute video. Take it away.
At Kingdom Analytics, our goal is to give you all the information you need to make the best decisions in your church. With access to thousands of data points on nearly every household in America, we're able to give you a picture of who exactly is in your church and how to reach more of your community. The data we provide will help you make decisions on everything from where to put a new multi-site campus, all the way down to what flavor of coffee you should buy. So come talk to us today about scheduling a free consultation for your church.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Esparza. I'm the founder of Kingdom Analytics. Over the last 3 years, we've been blessed to serve over 200 churches all across the country. And we do this by giving them access to thousands of data points on both their community and their congregation. We're able to look at things like what are the ministry needs in our community, how is our congregation equipped to fit those needs, who are we reaching, who are we not reaching, and maybe how do we reach those people in our communities. If you'd like to learn a little more, we're kind of doing a little special thing here where you're able to sign up for a free consultation. You can email myself directly, Andrew at kingdomanalytics.com, and we'll talk about some of the potential opportunities within your church and your community as it relates to data and some of the services we may be able to provide to help you grow and reach more of your community. So we're really excited for that. And another great thing is through our partnership with Transformation Ministries as Transformation Ministry member churches, you also receive a really great discount on any of those services, better than anyone else will get anywhere in the country. So we're looking forward to that. And again, if you'd like to learn more, feel free to set up a free consultation with us. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.
We have a partnership with TM and Kingdom Analytics. You'll be able to use their stuff, all of their research at greatly reduced prices. So check the website for that. And also check the website to register for the conference. It's tmchurches.org. And the rest of these webinars coming up pre-conference, you have to register in order to get the webinars. And yes, when you register, there's a $15 charge. And I will say, if that's a big problem for you, send me a note. I may pay your $15. Well, I just want to make sure we don't go too overboard on that, but we don't want money to be in the way. But next week, we've got a great one with Jim Powell coming up. I'll announce that a little bit more toward the end, but I want to get right to our special guests, Justin and Tricia Davis. They have planted two very successful churches, and Justin is just a fantastic leader. He's all about multiplication, all about empowering people, an incredible leader, a very brilliant man in that he married Tricia, who's just Tricia's an amazing person. I just loved hearing the story. She talked about being involved in some gang stuff in Southern California when she was growing up. That makes my heart feel good. That's kind of where I'm from. Had similar experiences. They have a bunch of kids. They're adding them regularly. And they have written the book on marriage. It's called Beyond Ordinary. And we'll show a little picture of it here a little bit later on. You've got to buy the book. If you're on the webinar today, instead of spending $15 for the conference today, you can spend whatever it is on Amazon, Beyond Ordinary. And they're speakers who go all over the country talking about marriage. We have them today for free. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you guys for doing this. I'm going to turn it over to Justin and Tricia Davis from Hope City Church in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thanks so much. That's really the best introduction we've ever had, JD. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Jess and I were talking about just the timing of having these Tuesdays gathering of just being poured into as church planners and being in ministry. We know that we have this shared experience of what it means to be living out ministry right now. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. As JD said, we have a lot of kids. We have 3 biological kids. We have a picture of our family that continues to grow. One is a picture of our oldest son's wedding, and the second one is of our second born, who just got married a month ago, right? It feels like
6 years ago.
6 years ago. So we have 3 biological, and over the past 5 years, we'll just give you guys a little bit of a crazy snapshot, and you may need to take a nap after I share it. But in 2015, we moved from Nashville, Tennessee, where Justin was on staff at a large church called Crosspoint Community Church, and we moved to Indianapolis, Indiana to plant Hope City. And so we did that, and we launched our first kid into college, and then our second, and then they fell in love, and shockingly, both of them got married very young. So within 2 years, we've married off 2.
Yep.
And we had this 3-week period where we really thought like the end was near.
We were only going to have one at home. The light was at the end of the tunnel. We were actually going to start making money again. It was going to be fantastic.
They were going to actually graduate from college.
Yep.
It was just going to be amazing. And within 3 weeks, we had our oldest get engaged. A week later, our second born graduated from high school, going into college. And then a week after that, we adopted our son and daughter, Jalen and Janiyah. So it's been a crazy ride. So if you're here today and you are...
we launched Hope City.
We did launch Hope City. I probably should have mentioned that. If you're here today and you're like, I'm with you, sister, like maybe a little bit tired, maybe a little like ready for things to calm down. We just want you to know that we pray that this is a conversation where you feel like we literally are in our kitchen in our living room, just talking about what it means to thrive, not only in ministry, but in our marriage.
Absolutely. And we just want you to know that you're not alone and you're not crazy. And we're
Oh, wait a minute. It sounds to me like you guys are crazy.
Exactly.
It's okay if we are crazy. And is it okay if people send in questions on the chat as
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Send in any questions that you have, anything that you would like Tricia to answer, that'd be phenomenal. No one really asked me for my wisdom. It's usually just her.
This is not true.
So we've been married for 25 years. We celebrated 25 years of marriage in July. We got married when we were 12. That's not true. I just wish that it were. We're really that old. But just what we thought we could do at the beginning part here is just share a little bit of our story with you, and just kind of how we came to where we are now in our life, and just the desire that we have to pour into marriages and especially into ministry couples. It's been a really weird season for us, just like it has for you. We typically do about 12 to 15 marriage conferences at different churches across the country per year. And all of those got canceled because of COVID-19. In fact, all of our marriage conferences through February have been canceled. And so we actually have one in November that's still on the books, but I don't think they're going to have it. And then we have 2 or 3 that are scheduled for March, but we'll see how that all plays out. And so this is a real privilege for us to be able to pour into you guys and pour into TM. TM has been a huge partner of ours as we've launched Hope City.
Yeah.
So Tricia and I met in 1993. I was a junior in college, and she was a freshman. And I had a buddy of mine come up to me that I played on the basketball team with, and he said, "Hey, have you seen the hot chick from Chicago with the bright red lipstick?" And it was a small Christian college in the middle of Illinois, and I had not seen Trish yet, but I met her the next day, tried to set her up with my best friend Kenny, and she was not interested in him. But something about that interaction, I just was intrigued by her. It may have been her attitude, maybe her Chicago accent, but I just wanted to get to know her. And so we met, we fell in love shortly after that. After I asked her out about 50 times, she finally said yes. And we started dating, and then we got married in the summer of 1995. It was the summer before my second senior year of college. I squeezed 4 years into 5 and just wanted more student loans. And so we got married. We were young, we were in love, we were broke. And then 4 months into marriage, we realized that Tricia doesn't have the flu like we thought she did. She didn't have COVID-19 either. She was pregnant with our first son, Micah. And so we had a ton of transition that happened really within that first year of marriage. I graduated from college, and we dove headfirst into ministry. I graduated in May. The next day, we moved 600 miles away from both of our homes to a town called Sandusky, Ohio. And we were the youngest people in the church. There was no kid in the nursery under kindergarten. And so, other than our son. And so it was just this huge transition of being in college and being around friends to being in ministry. But we felt like God had laid on our hearts this desire to help kids who were far from God experience hope through Jesus. And so we did that for the next 7 years. And 7 years into ministry and 7 years into our marriage, we just felt like God had laid on our hearts this desire to plant a church for people who didn't go to church. And we'd never done that before. Church planting wasn't as popular as it is now. There was not a lot of church planting organizations, or none that I knew of at the time.
Yeah, that word church planting was kind of adversarial at the time.
If you're planting a church, you either got fired or you're mad at somebody, right? And so we didn't know what we were doing, but we sold everything that we owned, and we were actually living in Nashville. This is in 2002. We were living in Nashville at the time, and we moved to the northeast side of Indianapolis, about 45 minutes from where we live right now. And we had our big business plan was we had $5,000 to our name, and we knew 2 people that lived in Noblesville, Indiana. We thought by the time we're out of this money, we should have a church going. And that sounds very faith-filled. It's a really stupid way to start a church, but that's what we did. And so we moved on June 1st, 2002, and on June the 9th, we had our very first service, and 12 people showed up. And if you have planted a church at all, you're looking for any sign at all that God may be remotely in it. And I'm thinking 12 people, 12 disciples. This is biblical, right? 3 of these people were in sandals. Jesus himself wore sandals. It's anointed. It's going to work. And that 12 people became 15 people, and 15 became 20. And we had a couple of mega churches in the area that partner with us, and they gave us resources and people, and they let us meet at their building, and they let me speak, and they told people to leave and go with us. And so God was just really doing some really amazing things. And over the next, 9 months, actually, God would build our launch team. When we launched public services in September of 2003, a little over 250 people showed up that first day. And more than the number, though, for those of you that have done church planning, it's not just the number of people. It's this vision, this dream that you have, right, that you see God bring it into fruition. And 250 people showed up that first day. And over the next 9 months, over the next 18 months, from September of 2003 to Easter of 2005, our church would grow to about 700 people. And it was people who were finding their way back to God, and people who were being baptized, and people who hadn't been to church in years were coming back to church, and people who hadn't darkened the doors of a church were finding hope in Jesus, and they were coming to Christ, and they were joining small groups, and they're going on mission trips. And it was just this front row seat we had to the book of Acts. It was just crazy to watch it all play out. Well, over those 3 years, even though we had accumulated all this success from a church planting standpoint, there were cracks in the foundation of my faith and cracks in our marriage relationship that began to come to the surface. And there was really this fracture that took place in our marriage relationship. And October 9th, 2005, I came home from church, and I told Trish that we needed to have a conversation. And she said, "About what?" And I said, "About us." And she said, "Well, what about us?" And I just said, "I'm done." And she said, "You're done with what?" And I said, I'm done with you. Like, I don't want to be married anymore. I don't want to be in ministry anymore. I'm not in love with you anymore. I'm having an affair. It's with your best friend, and I want to be with her. And I wish, 16 years later, I wish it was a confession of remorse, and I wish it was a confession of repentance. It was just a confession of resignation. We had this season of our marriage where we were white hot and passionate about one another and about ministry, and then we became just numb, and now I was just resigned. I didn't want to be in this relationship anymore. Obviously, the intensity of that conversation went way up, and Trish asked me to leave the house, and I left the house and went to check into a hotel, and a lady from our church called me as I was going to the hotel, and she said, "If you have any hope at all of restoring your marriage relationship, you're going to go to this counseling session that we've set for you for tomorrow." And I just thought, counseling? I've been a pastor for 10 years. I don't go to counseling. I do counseling. Never been to one counseling session. By the grace of God, I showed up at this counseling session the next day and basically told the counselor about as much as the story as I just told you. And she interrupted me and she said, "Can I just ask you kind of what is your objective? Like, what do you hope to accomplish in this counseling session?" And I said, "If I'm just being straight up honest with you, I want you to help me figure out how God's going to bless my life no matter who I choose. Like, that's what I really want." And she said something in that session that became the linchpin of the restoration that God would do in our marriage. She said, "I can help broken people. I can't help hard-hearted people." And I'd been a Christian since I was 10 years old. I'd been a pastor for 10 years at that time. I'd never really experienced brokenness. And over the course of the next couple of days, Tricia packed up all of my things and she kicked me out of the house, moved me in with a family that helped us start the church. And we were separated for 2.5 months. We didn't talk for the next 10 days. And God began to break my heart and give me a desire for my marriage again. And I'll never forget 10 days into our separation, she called me on the phone and she said, "I hear you've been going to counseling." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I'm willing to go with you." And so we started going to counseling together. We went to counseling 4 days a week for the next 2 months. And so we tell couples all the time, if you feel like your marriage is in trouble, our counselor wanted to see us 4 days a week. That's how jacked up we were, all right? So just hang in there. It's going to be fine. But God began to use those counseling sessions and the intensity of those counseling sessions and the frequency to peel back layers of brokenness and hurt and frustration and dysfunction and half-truths and bitterness and resentment that we hadn't taken the time to talk about or had the courage to talk about, and began a restoration process in our marriage that continues to this day. And that really was not the finish line for us. That was the starting line. of a journey that God has brought us on over the last 15 years, where we now get to speak into marriage and we get to speak into ministry.
And I know, I mean, in the midst of everything that just feels so heavy right now, I know that story is heavy, and it is. But our encouragement and where we want to share our heart today is it's a 16-year-old story. And we have 16 years of thriving in marriage and ministry, and it's come through the hard work of love. It's come through brokenness and forgiveness and surrender, and that constant surrender. And so when you think of our story 16 years ago and now fast forward to where we are today, the past 5 years have been intense in a different way. And I don't know where you are in your story. Hopefully your story doesn't match our story, but you know what it's like to sit in the heart of life and lead at the same time. And in those early years of restoration, of restoring our marriage, we got out of ministry. We had no desire to go back in ministry. Be frank with you, Justin was crushing it as an executive recruiter, placing commercial lenders and banks. And they had this thing called President Club trips. And I'll never forget, Justin won one. And we were sitting in a country that we weren't doing a mission trip. We were just sitting on a beach. And I looked at Justin and I said, cheers to never going back into ministry. Like, we were just running the opposite direction.
Sleeping in on Sunday mornings, making pancakes, not going to church. That's kind of what we're doing now with COVID-19. But
this is before, like, we watched really on the internet, church services. But I share that with you is our heart and who we are today. Often people ask, man, now that you've planted a church and it's doing well and you've got these kids that are thriving in ministry, do you just feel like you've come full circle? And what I want to encourage you is the things that we're going to share with you about what it means to thrive in ministry and marriage, how to protect your marriage while in ministry. Everything is overflow. When you experience the type of loss that Justin and I have experienced, and when you hit rock bottom, you recognize that rock bottom is still solid surface to stand, and you get to stand in Jesus. And it shifted how we saw Jesus in our life. It shifted our value and how we are valued by God, that his love for us. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think we all need that reminder that ministry is the overflow to a calling, but that our marriage is holy. And in that calling, that when we begin to lean into our marriage relationship and we become healthy in our marriage, what we have wish we knew the first time around, the first 10 years of our marriage that we know now, is that if we would have put our marriage first and chose to get healthy in that area of our lives, the overflow would be a healthy ministry. And so what we want to share with you, it's going to sound like, hey, here are 4 happy hops to a healthy marriage. And that does not exist, sadly. But we do want to share with you.
We'd sell a lot more books if we had that secret. I'll tell you that.
That's right. And we've got a couple of slides just to show you, and maybe you want to grab a journal and jot some of these things down. But we want to share 4 keys to protecting your marriage. Just 4 simple keys to protecting your marriage. And what I want to let you know, these aren't things that Justin and I did 16 years ago. These are principles that we are still living out on a daily. We have to fight for these. And I believe because we continue to fight for them, we can say that we've been married 25 years. And actually, we don't just love each other. We really like each other on most days.
Except when we're working from home and doing homeschool with kids that aren't in school because of COVID-19.
Preach.
Other than that, we really like each other.
Yes, they are all duct taped to their beds right now. And so we got about a half hour before they can escape. So
exactly. So key number 1, we would say, is to engage in the spiritual battle. Engage in the spiritual battle. And that kind of sounds a little bit elementary, but I think one of the things that is so easy to do in ministry is it's easy to attach spirituality and the spiritual reality of ministry, and then forget about the spiritual reality of our marriage. And, marriage is physical, hopefully, and marriage is emotional, obviously, but more than anything else, marriage is spiritual. And there was just this reality to our marriage that Tricia and I, we realized that we were engaged in a spiritual battle when it came to ministry, but we took for granted the spiritual battle that took place for the heart, our hearts, and for the heart of our marriage.
We joke, it kind of looked like this. In the first couple of years of ministry and marriage, we prayed for everybody. Like especially when you're a church planner, you know, we prayed for like Bob to be sober, to be able to play bass on Sunday morning. You know, you're just kind of desperate. We prayed for our next door neighbors, Aunt Kathy, whose cat passed away. I mean, we would pray, but in the first 10 years of ministry, I cannot honestly say that I remember us sitting down and praying together for each other, which is a really sad statement, but it was true. We got caught up in the semantics of prayer rather than the purpose of prayer.
And I think one of the ways that we began to really realize this is when Trish and I were separated. Our kids at the time, this was before we adopted our kids, obviously, because we've only had them for 3 years. But our oldest son, Micah, was 9, our middle son was 6, and our youngest was 3. And I was with the 3 boys at the house that I was staying at. And I was trying to explain to them that Mommy and I are going to be separated. Mommy and I might get divorced. And my oldest son said, "Are you and Mom going to get back together?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "What I do know is I'm not going to be the pastor of the church anymore." And he just freaked out. And he's like, "You have to be the pastor. You have to be the pastor. I'm the pastor's son. You have to be the pastor." And it was just this snapshot of a reality that we had built our entire life, our entire family centered around the church, but not really centered around Jesus. And we had found our identity in ministry rather than finding our identity in Christ. And it changed how we approached life. It changed how we approached prayer. It changed how we approached viewing our spouse and viewing the things that we go through on a daily basis. And it's not always easy. But one of the things that we constantly evaluate is, are we praying for each other as much as we're praying for people in the church? Mm-hmm. Are we praying with each other as much as we're praying with our congregation? And, you know, prayer is the most intimate thing that you can do together.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's more intimate, there's other intimate things, but you know what I'm trying to say from a spiritual standpoint. And when you invite God into your prayer life and you invite God into your prayers with your spouse, there is a connection and an intimacy that is developed that allows you to protect that relationship.
Second
is just be committed to speaking.
Can I ask a couple questions? Yeah. No, here's number one. It's going really well. Somebody's asked if they can translate it and share this video with their congregation. So can we share this?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Hey, great. I have a question. You talked about being in the corporate world, out of ministry. Mm-hmm. Is the spiritual battle heavier in ministry for couples, or is it the same?
Well, that was, you know, it was very eye-opening when I was out of ministry for 4 years. Initially, I started waiting tables at P.F. Chang's until I could find an actual job. And I did that for about 3 months. And then I started working as a headhunter. And I have to say that the spiritual battle in ministry is much more intense than in the corporate world. At least for me, it was. I can't speak for everyone, but there's a front line. You're still in a battle, right? But you're on the front line of that battle when you're in ministry, when you're trying to be the tip of the spear and you're trying to take ground for the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And then you're also trying to battle all the expectations and all of the preconceived ideas and all the political opinions that all your people in your congregation have. It is exhausting. And I think there's a mental and emotional exhaustion that comes from ministry that you don't necessarily always experience in the corporate world, that then allows you to weaken the spiritual, the spiritual capacity that you have. And so I think being aware of your mental and emotional health is as important as being aware of your spiritual health. And so I do think, and you know, for those of you that may be bivocational, you might be able to speak into this better than me. But for me personally, those 4 years, one of the things that we really had to evaluate going back into ministry is, do we really want to bring this on ourselves? Like, do we really want to be back on the front lines of ministry, because it was a lot easier to just serve on the setup team and serve on the worship team and not be responsible and write a check rather than giving our life to that calling. And one of the things that we've encouraged our two oldest boys, who are, one's going into counseling, the other is a youth pastor, is you better be 100% sure there's nothing else you can do. Because if there's anything else you can do it. Right? But if you feel that calling is on your heart, then you have to prepare yourself for the battle that is.
But I think getting out of ministry, honestly, I wouldn't recommend it in the way that we did it, was the best gift we had ever given to our marriage, because all we knew was ministry since we were 18 years old. Even when Justin and I were dating, he had a side ministry, a little youth ministry in a really small country church, and it was still ministry. And what I realized is that ministry can do one or two things. One, it can convince you that you have to be invincible. And so with you thinking you have to be invincible, you aren't taking care of yourself. And then when things get hard, you don't have the stamina to keep it up. And the second part is, we recognize that ministry is one of the safest places to hide from your issues. If everybody thinks I'm great and I'm the hero of all the things, why expose what's really there? And that, I think that's what got us into trouble. And when we got out of ministry, we realized not having to champion everybody else, that mirror got really big, really quick, and it became the healthiest thing we've ever done.
That's good.
Thanks for stepping back into ministry, and thanks for that encouragement there.
Thanks, JD. The second principle is be committed to speaking the truth. Be committed to speaking the truth. One of the things that we've recognized over the last 15 years as we have gone through this process is God created us for intimacy. And the word intimacy literally means to be fully known. Yeah. And our greatest desire is that we would be known. Our greatest fear is that we won't be loved. And so what happens so often is, a lot of us, we compromise truth on the altar of being loved. And so we have a pain quotient for every relationship that we have. And we think, this is how as much pain as this person can handle. So this is as much truth as I'm going to give. And what we don't consciously do is, we don't compromise truth in our relationships because we want to be liars. Nobody wants to be a liar. We compromise truth in relationships because we want to be loved. But because intimacy is being fully known, every time you and I compromise truth in a relationship, we place a lid, we place a cap on the amount of intimacy that relationship can experience. This is true in our relationship with our spouse. It's also true in our relationship with God. And so oftentimes we think that there's this distance in our relationship because we're not spending time with one another, or we don't have date nights anymore. But really, a lot of the gaps and a lot of the space that we feel in our marriage relationship is because we stopped being willing to speak truth to one another in a loving way.
And this played out 2 years ago when our oldest got married. And I think all of us have had seasons where we've struggled with depression. When you live in the Midwest, everybody struggles with seasonal depression because it gets dark at like 2 o'clock. But our son got married, and just lining up to, or just right before he got married, he began to distance himself from me. And we've always been close, and rightfully so. It was like the perfect storm of just really being tired in ministry, and then having this significant shift in our for the first time for Justin and I. Micah has been with us since we were 20 years old. Like he was around 4 months into our marriage, and he was born 5 days after our marriage. And 5 days after
our first anniversary.
Yeah. Creating
reverse. Easy.
Yeah. But it was normal and it was natural. But what I did not know is that there were some broken parts of me that I was tired in ways I did not know. And so I was really close to a fence that I didn't know I was teetering on. And when that situation happened with Micah, when he began to kind of separate himself, I took it so personally and so deeply that it sent me into a spiral of depression. And it was a really hard summer. It was a summer of I've never dealt with depression like this. And it got worse and it got worse. And I just tried to get better and better. And then mid-July, I just hit rock bottom. And I had a 3-day period where suicide was on the table. And our ministry was thriving. Our kids are wonderful. This is before we adopted, I think. I don't know if no, our kids were adopted at that time. So our house was hard. And there was this moment where I was in my car 3 days in a row where I just didn't come home until like 10 o'clock at night. And I just lied to Justin where I was at. I had to work late. I'm full-time on staff at the church as well. And I had to make a decision. And I was going to make a decision that would alter the life of my family or would save my life. And I came home and I told Justin, I'm not well. And I don't know how to get better. And the Bible talks about the power of confession. And this part of our marriage life, being committed to speaking truth, can be excruciating. But because marriage is holy, because God says that in this marriage relationship, two should become one, there was a safety in being able to come to Justin. And you know what he said? He said, it's going to be okay. He didn't say, you know what, I need you to get better by Sunday because I need you to lead worship, or I need you to get better by next month because I need you to speak again. He said, it's okay. And I put this on the outline because this is probably one of the most passionate things I'm passionate about is this. Knowing your capacity in your current season of ministry creates healthy boundaries and right-sized expectations for a healthy marriage. I want to read that one more time. Knowing your capacity, not your marriage capacity, your personal capacity in your current ministry season. That's what creates these healthy boundaries and begins to right-size expectations for a healthy marriage. And the reason I am here today and the reason I'm at a place of health and wholeness, one, partly medication, which I've been very grateful for. But I think in speaking this truth, we've had healthy conversations for me to say, I'm a very high capacity leader. John Maxwell has like a scale. I'm a solid 8. Like I love to lead. I love to lead people. I love to get things done. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram for any of you that know the Enneagram. But I'm a broken person. Justin's a broken person. And when we begin to speak truth to one another, when we commit to that truth, that's where we become healthy. That's where we begin to step back and say, okay, in that season for me, I went on an emergency sabbatical and I told my entire church, my entire congregation why. And through my season of struggle, it began to create a breakthrough for mental health issues in our church that honestly, I was not looking to create. And so oftentimes when you choose to go first of knowing what your capacity is in your season of ministry, and people see you championing that to have a healthy marriage, what happens is when you go first, you empower other people in your congregation to go second. And that's when miracles and just an amazing community begins to happen.
That's good. One of the things that we try to say all the time is that authenticity is the pathway to transformation. If we want to change our behavior, then we can work really hard. If we want to change our heart, then we have to be honest about where we are. And, you know, that's been kind of a journey that we've been on, that 80% of the truth doesn't lead to 100% intimacy, that you have to give that last 20% in order to experience being fully known and fully loved, both by God. And God isn't going to love you any more than he does right now, but you'll experience God's love in its fullest capacity as you're authentic and as you're honest and as you're transparent with him. And one of the things that, you know, we say all the time is you don't have to be transparent with everyone, but you have to be transparent with someone. And that has allowed us to really experience intimacy and levels of our marriage that is needed in intimacy in our relationship with God. JD, you look like you have something to say right now.
All I have to say is keep going. You guys are doing great.
All right. I didn't want to move on if you had a question.
No.
Next principle would be believe the best. If you want to protect your marriage, believe the best about your spouse. And this has been something that we have that I've mastered that Tricia has not. No, I'm just joking. But when you believe the best about your spouse, it changes the disposition of your marriage.
Yeah.
It changes the defensive posture of your spouse. That when you come to your spouse with a posture of believing the best, then the defensive posture that your spouse has toward your accusations or toward your suspicions or toward your words, they begin to transform. They begin to, and one of the things that we say all the time is, we have an enemy, but your spouse isn't the enemy. We have one enemy that, oh, okay, I didn't know you had those.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Your spouse is your ally, not your enemy. All right. That's how Trish would say it. And I'm believing I'm believing the best.
Believing the best
Yeah,
to me.
exactly.
You're my ally.
Yeah. A few years ago, we were living in Nashville, Tennessee before we moved here. And I notoriously run late to meetings or everywhere basically. And I was running late to a meeting. We had several campuses at the church. And so I needed to get the kids to school and I needed to get to this meeting. And so Trish said, hey, I know that you were out in the van. I'm going to take your car and I'm going to get gas in your car so you don't have to stop. And on your way to the church, to your meeting, since you're already running late, I'm going to put gas in your car. And I'm like, that is amazing, baby. She's like, I'm going to go to the Kroger. We have Kroger here. It's a grocery store that also has gas stations. And so I go to Kroger, I meet her at Kroger, and I'm circling Kroger over and over and over again. I'm texting her, I'm calling her. She doesn't do a good job always of picking up her phone. And so most of the time she doesn't know where it's at. And so I'm calling her over and over and over again. She's not picking up. Finally, she picks up. I'm like, where are you? She's like, where are you? I said, I'm at Kroger. She's like, no, you're not. I'm at Kroger. Well, there were two Krogers, 1.2 miles from our house in the opposite direction.
I was at the right Kroger. I just, for the record.
And I just exploded on her. I'm like, I cannot believe you. You made me even more late. And I just go off on her. And I hang up on her, which I don't really struggle.
Think I can remember you ever.
And I was just so mad. I'm just like, she's trying to sabotage me. I can't believe she would do this. And I hung up, and as I was driving there, miraculously, the Holy Spirit still made his way into my life and my heart, even though I was being such a jerk. And I just felt the Holy Spirit say to me, you're not believing the best at all. Like, she tried to serve you. She tried to go over and above to take time to put gas in your car, which you're always running on fumes. Where is the grace in this? And by the time I got there, I was in a frame of mind to authentically apologize. But it was just this real-time realization how we're predisposed to believe the worst about the person we love the most. Mm-hmm. We give the benefit of the doubt to people who could care less about us at times. But for our spouse, we always assume that they believe the worst about us. And so I just want to encourage you that if you want to change the culture of your marriage relationship, to believe the best about your spouse. And then once you believe the best, you'll realize that your spouse isn't your enemy, they're your ally.
There's this passage found in Hebrews, and it's kind of an odd passage, but it literally became just a life-giving passage to me when Justin and I were separated. And I always come back to it, especially when I think about thinking the best, because if you're anything like us, when ministry gets hard, someone leaves your church, or you just get sideswiped by something that you didn't see coming, our spouse is the easiest target. And so we don't think the best because we're pouring our ministry wounds on each other. And this passage, it's found in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 10. I don't have it on a slide, but it says, for our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best that they knew how. But God's discipline is always right and good for us because it means we will share in his holiness. Now, mind you, when I read this and we were separated, I'm like, I don't think I can handle any more discipline at this point. Like, I was like warring with God. But I think what he was trying to get my attention with is in verse 11. He says, no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterwards, there will be a quiet harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. Verse 12. So take a new grip with your tired hands and stand firm on your shaky legs and mark out a straight path for your feet. Then those who follow you, though they are weak and lame, will not stumble but become strong. And it's just this reminder, if we're going to think the best, we have to remember that when we lean into this discipline of thinking the best, it's going to be hard. When we lean into trying to give our best in ministry and in marriage, it's going to be hard. But it's this recognition that God knows that for some of you, you're tired. For some of you, you are on shaky legs and you're thinking, you know what the issue is? It's me, and I just need to quit ministry. And I hope that you are encouraged to know that God's saying, listen, don't give up. You struggling in ministry or maybe even in your marriage isn't a reflection on leadership. It's a reflection that life is hard, but that we always have a choice to lean into his discipline, and nobody enjoys it. But as we continue to, we do the hard work of love, and we choose these things to recognize the spiritual battle, to be committed to speaking truth, to believe the best. I'm telling you, it is a game changer. And it changes who we are today. I mean, the past 5 years makes what we went through 16 years ago almost like easy. It has been intense, and it's been hard in a different way, not in a moral way, but just in life issue ways. But it always comes back to these principles that they're heart transformational.
I know we got to move on because we're running a little bit short on time, but I do want to say this too. This is a really good principle for your parenting too. A lot of people have asked us how we've parented teenagers, how we have a very good relationship with all of our older kids. And it's this principle, it leads the way. Like, we believe the best about them. We trust them and let them prove us wrong.
Yeah.
And that has been such a better model for us. My parents, they parented me out of suspicion and distrust. And so I was constantly sneaking around, where we felt like, okay, we're gonna apply trust to our kids and allow them then to go the opposite direction. And it just has earned us credibility with them. It's been hard with our adopted kids because they've experienced trauma and they've experienced abuse. And so they came into our family trying to act out our family values rather than live out our family values. And so that's been a little bit hard. We've had to kind of retool that whole thing with them. But for our older kids, it's just been a game changer for us. And that's why we have a relationship with them, not just as parents now that they're adults, but also as friends, because there's a level of trust that we've built there, and they assume the best about us too. And so when we do come down on them, it's from a place of correction and not a place of suspicion. It's because they know that we have their best in mind. So.
Okay, the last one, we saved the best for last. How much time do we have left, Jamie?
5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes.
This is apropos for this topic.
I cannot believe you just said that. But number 4 is have sex. And I know some of you maybe just logged off, but number 4, have sex. And I want you to read the next slide. This is straight out of scripture. It's 1 Corinthians, and I love that it's the message, and it says this, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 2-5. It says that sexual drives are strong, but marriage is strong enough to contain them and provide for a balanced and fulfilling life in a world of sexual disorder. The marriage bed must be a place of mutuality, the husband seeking to satisfy his wife and the wife seeking to satisfy her husband. And this is where I want you to hear our heart in this, that marriage is not a place to stand up for your rights. Marriage is a decision. It's a decision to serve the other, whether in bed or out. And what we've recognized is that ministry pulls you in all different directions, but physical intimacy is what separates marriage from any other relationship. It's what makes it holy. And when you can be known by your spouse emotionally and spiritually, when you can be known physically, it's a game changer because nobody else gets to be a part of it. Nobody else has that unique part of your marriage relationship. And God has given us the gift of intimacy. And so if you've been married for a year, if you've been married for 50 years, this is a gift that God has given us. And what we've recognized is when we pursue each other intimately, we pursue each other beyond just a moment, but we begin to live a life where it's what marriage is supposed to be. It's knowing each other in all of those areas, and it makes marriage fun. and it makes marriage unique and different. I don't know if you want to add to that. You have
No, I just think that so often physical intimacy is looked upon as like this add-on at the end of the day, or if we get to it. One of the things that we had in our marriage was we had this thing called shutdown mode for the first 10 years, where if I didn't come home on time, or if I worked too much, or if I didn't pursue Trish, then she would put me on shutdown mode, and it was this punishment. She used sexual intimacy as punishment, and I had to kind of earn my way back to it.
Yeah.
And I could tell when shutdown mode was coming, and so I would come home on time, and I would bring flowers, and I'd make a reservation at a restaurant that we couldn't afford, and I would find a babysitter, and I would be sitting at dinner with her after not pouring into her emotionally or spiritually for the last month, thinking I'm the most romantic man alive, I'm getting lucky tonight. And she would be at the same dinner thinking he only does this when he wants something. And I think for us as guys, if we pursue our wife spiritually and we pursue our wife emotionally, we don't have to guilt trip physically. We don't have to manipulate physically. That physical intimacy is an overflow of the spiritual and emotional intimacy that God has created us to experience as couples. And when you are functioning well spiritually and you're functioning well emotionally, and you have that physical connection, there's a protection around your marriage relationship that is designed by God and ordained by God to allow the marriage relationship to thrive in a physical and a spiritual and an emotional, intimate way that no other relationship can touch.
Well, we've got about 40 questions on sex that have come up, but before we get to we only got a few minutes left. One question that I think is appropriate to almost all four of your points is on the capacity issue. And the question, how do you know what your capacity is without hitting rock bottom and going, oh, there it is?
Yeah, I mean, from the very first day that we planted, if you talk to our staff, Justin does big picture vision, and I function more of like in an executive pastor role. I oversee our staff, and I talk about this all the time. And season and capacity is fluid. And how do you figure that out is you have to do the work to sit down and say, okay, what is my season? Like, do you guys have littles in the house? Have you recently become empty nesters? What season are you in? And knowing that, what season are you in financially? Maybe you're a brand new church planner and things are tight, so you find yourself being bivocational, and that is nothing to ever be ashamed of. It is part of church planning sometimes. But in that season, then how God wired you, what is your capacity? And so Justin's capacity to do certain things is different from me. And so if he was placing those expectations that he wanted me to do A, B, C, and D in ministry because he can get it done in this season, you easily burn out your spouse, and then you easily burn out your staff. And so you first have to ask yourself, what season of life am I in? For us, we have a special needs child who has some really hard life issues. It has placed us in an unexpected season that has changed my capacity to do the things I was doing. And so I need to step back and go, okay, what needs to be my main priority? And then what comes next?
I think there are these things called special events. There's things called COVID-19.
Yeah.
Like where you can say, okay, I've got to run really hard for this next season.
Yeah.
The problem is for a lot of us, that season just repeats itself right into the next season. And so if you said this is just a season more than once or twice, it's not a season, it's your life. Right. And so we took a sabbatical this summer. We took the whole month of June off, which felt really odd in the middle of a pandemic, but just some things that we had going on personally at home with our son and the exhaustion of the pandemic. I knew that I was not going to be able to function in September if I didn't take some time off in June. And sadly, it was the first time I'd ever taken more than a week off at a time in ministry. I took 2 weeks off when I was an executive recruiter because, I didn't really care if I was gone for 2 weeks. And it was the healthiest thing and the most refreshing thing I could have done. And then I said to Trish, I said, we're building this into our rhythm from here on out. We're going to take a month off every summer from now on. And it was one of those things where I had to come to terms with, in this season where I am in ministry and where I am in my life and where we are as parents, we need this time. And we have a board that, has afforded us that, and they are concerned about our mental and emotional health as well. And so that has been a huge gift to us.
Wow, that is fantastic stuff. I have just a couple questions here. The book is called Beyond Ordinary. And make sure you get that. If we want to know a little more, I mean, you guys have been so transparent and open with us. We all just want, let me talk to you about my stuff. Do you do counseling? You're available for these marriage conferences? Can we email you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website, our marriage website is refineus.org. We have a number of free, we have free stuff there. We have resources there. We come to your church, we do marriage conference. We're actually going to do a virtual marriage conference for, anybody who wants to sign up for it here in the next month or so. We're working on some of the details of that, of what that looks like and how we can broadcast that. But we love pouring into pastors. We do marriage coaching, coaching with a couple of people right now doing marriage coaching. So those are some different resources that we do offer. Fantastic.
Lena, why don't you keep that slide up there so we can make sure that we see that. Thank you so much. And if you're on this webinar, or if you're looking for, wow, I need some help in this marriage thing, you can talk to Justin and Tricia, contact them. You can also contact the TM office. We have some counselors that we're saying, hey, we could send you to them. So don't let this stuff slip. Let me have you each take 1 minute. What do you want to say to us that you didn't get a chance to say, or what do you want to just affirm? 1 minute wrap up for each of you.
I'll go first. That way I'll leave you with 30 seconds. I always say, I say in 5 minutes what Trish could say in one. I just think the biggest thing I would want to say is, one of the biggest lies that the enemy tries to convince us is that nobody else struggles with this. And whatever this is. And if that's pornography, if that's marriage problems, if that's disconnect in your marriage relationship, if that's discouragement in ministry, whatever it is that you're going through, there's probably a voice saying nobody else. And I can just tell you from personal experience, that is not true, that we all struggle with certain things. And it doesn't mean that you're ill-equipped to be a leader. It just means that you're human and that God longs to heal that part of your heart. But in order for him to heal that part of your heart, he can't heal parts of our heart we're not willing to give to him. And just like he doesn't force himself into our salvation, he doesn't force himself into our transformation. And so having a person to confess that to, whether that be someone at your church, somebody at TM, to us, that's what we want to provide for you.
And I would just quickly say, comparison is the thief of all joy. No one can replace you. You are unique, and God has gifted you in the people that he has placed in front of you. And if that's thousands of people, or if that's 10 people in the season of church planning that you're in, you are irreplaceable to God. So keep leading. Don't let social media be a trip up. Don't let the thought of a platform or having to have something to be worthy of leadership. God has equipped you. He equipped Moses with nothing. He equipped countless people throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament who didn't deserve to lead or had what they needed, but yet they were exactly the right leader for the right time. And God has called you to this in this season of ministry and in this season of the church. And thank you for what you do.
That was more than a minute, but I loved it.
I want to say to both of you, thank you for what you're doing, for planting churches, for multiplying churches, for your vulnerability, your willingness to tackle this marriage and ministry deal, and just helping people. God's got his hand on you too. Thank you for taking a sabbatical. Keep up the good work. We're praying for Hope City, Indy. We're praying for you guys. and thanks for sharing with us today.